We are coming to the last talk of this morning, and the speaker is Professor Stephen Thomas. He has studied chemistry and economics, so far I know, and he has worked over 20 years at the well-known Science Policy Research Unit SPRU at the University of Sussex. And since 2001, he has been professor at the University of Greenwich Business School, London, UK. He's mainly working in the field of energy policy with a focus on the economics and policy of nuclear power. He will speak on prospects of nuclear life extension and new build in Europe. Thank you, Stephen, that you are willing to talk about that.
And apologies for the mistiming of my presentation.
No problem at all.
Right. What I want to talk about today is to give you an overview of nuclear capacity in Europe, in particular look at what the capacity and operation in Europe is, where retired reactors are, what the prospects for new nuclear capacity in Europe are, and then come on to the main part of my presentation, which is to look at each country's life extension policies. And the answer, to cut to the chase, the answer is that nearly every country is now expecting to operate their plants for at least 60 years. The exceptions, you will know, Germany and the United Kingdom, but otherwise the rest are nearly all 60-year lives. So the brief overview, the capacity in operation is about 117 gigawatts in 16 countries. Just over half of it is in France. There is nearly 10 gigawatts under construction in 5 different countries. And that's much less than the amount of capacity that's been retired, which is nearly 40 gigawatts in 10 countries. And most of that is in just 4 countries and about half in Germany. So looking at more on a country-by-country basis, you can see that France dominates the operating reactors with about just over 50%. Next comes the UK and Germany, and their contribution will be going down very steeply in the next 2 to 3 years. Germany will, of course, retire all its remaining reactors by the end of next year, and the United Kingdom will have retired 5 of its reactors, 5 of its nuclear power stations by the end of 2024. So the French contribution to Europe's nuclear capacity will go up to about 60%. If we look at the retired reactors, we can see that Germany dominates these and will increase as the remaining reactors are retired. That percentage will go up again. France has a significant number of reactors retired, and if the French government policy of retiring another 12 by 2035 is carried through, again that proportion will go up. Similarly with the United Kingdom, with about 5 gigawatts going to be retired in the next 3 years. If we move on to the prospects for new capacity, there are 5 projects. The 2 notoriously late projects in Finland and France, Olkiluoto, which is now 13 years late, France, Flamanville, which is probably 12 years late or more. The United Kingdom started constructing the Hinkley Point plant in 2018. The schedule is slipping and expected completion is now 2026 to 28. Then we have the Mochovce project in Slovakia, where construction started in 1987. 2 units are already completed, and the remaining 2 are said to be essentially complete and ready to start up. Finally, we have Belarus with 2 Russian design reactors at the Ostrovets site. The first of these is now in testing, and the second is expected to follow soon. If we move on to firm orders and prospects for orders, we can see that there are 2 firm orders, one for Finland, one for Hungary, both to be supplied by Rosatom. These contracts were signed about 6 or 7 years ago, when construction was expected to start in about 2016 or 2017, but that has been continually delayed and is probably still at least 2 years away from construction starts, but it seems likely that those projects will proceed. In terms of the prospects, the United Kingdom had a government plan for 6 new nuclear power stations to be built. We had owners for the sites, technologies identified, but it's going badly wrong. 3 of the projects have been abandoned completely: Wilver, Oldbury and Moorside, and 2 more of them are in very serious doubt now. Sizewell because of difficulty financing it, Bradwell because of the involvement of a Chinese reactor vendor in the project. Only the Hinkley Point project is likely to go ahead. For France, the French government asked EDF to cost 6 orders for new EPRs, the revised EPR2 design, and those are being costed. That will be a huge investment, probably in the order of 75 billion euros if they stick to costings. So given the very poor financial state of EDF, it's not at all clear that that project can go ahead. Then we have 4 Eastern European countries, which are countries which continually try to launch nuclear power programs and continually fail. Czechia and Poland both are in the phase of identifying reactor vendors with a view to having a call for tenders in the next 2 to 3 years, with the completion of these plants in the early 2030s. Czechia will be at the Dukovany site. Poland hasn't identified its site yet, but it's the most likely site is the one where Soviet reactors were under construction in 1990, Zanoviec. Then we come to Cernavodă in Romania. They ordered 4 reactors from the Canadian vendor AECL using the CANDU design. 1 was completed in 1995, 1 was completed in 2005, and since then Romania has been trying to find a partner who would build the remaining 2 plants, and 2 or 3 attempts of that have failed. The most recent failed a couple of months ago when China General Nuclear withdrew from the project. Then we come to Bulgaria, which ordered 2 plants from Rosatom and then decided to cancel the project, but it was forced to pay for the equipment, and now it has decided it wants to build them after all. And it is now in negotiations with Westinghouse to build these Russian design plants. Then we have 4 more countries that are talking about nuclear but are not yet as advanced as those other 4: Slovenia, Estonia, Lithuania and Slovakia. So let's move on to the life extension policies, and we can split the countries into 2 Western European countries into 2 groups. One group are the countries which have fixed licensing periods. In other words, they have a period of, say, 40 years of license, then the license runs out and must be renewed, or the plant retired. we start with Switzerland, they have 3 gigawatts or 4 reactors. The former policy was that they would be closed after 50 years of operation in 2020 to 2034, but now closure has been pushed back to about 2050 with a 60-year life. And their oldest reactor, Besnau 1, is the world's oldest operating reactor. It was completed around 1970. Then we come to Belgium, which has about 6 gigawatts of reactors, seven reactors. Policy is now for closure by 2025 after 40 to 50 years of life. The plant owner, Engie, had planned to life extend the 2 newest reactors to 2045, but a few months ago it abandoned work on life extension, so it now does look as though Belgium will close all its reactors by 2025. The Netherlands has 1 small reactor. The current policy is closure after 60 years in 2033, but the owner is lobbying for further life extensions. Then there is Spain with 7 gigawatts, 7 reactors. Previously, the policy was closure after about 40 years, with the last to close by 2030. The policy has now been pushed out by 5 years, so that the last reactor will close in 2035 after about 45 years of life. All 4 of these countries have had phase-out policies, but none has closed reactors before the end of their operating life, and all except Belgium is still trying to extend the life, and all are far exceeding the 40-year expected life. The second set of West European countries are those with open licensing periods, and these are the countries where there is no fixed period for the license. The plant is reviewed after each major maintenance period, i.e. about every year or about every 18 months, and then the reactor is relicensed until the next maintenance shutdown. Finland, the Russian design plant at Loviisa is currently expected to run for 50 years to about 2030. The other plant, the Swedish designed Olkiluoto, is expected to run for 60 years to about 2040. But the owners of the Loviisa plant are now seeking a further 20 years for Loviisa, so that would take it to about a 70-year life. Sweden has closed 6 of its reactors, but the 6 remaining reactors are now expected to operate for 60 years till beyond 2040. The most interesting country is probably France, because the French regulator, the ASN, has specified the measures needed for a 10-year life extension to 50 years. And ASN is the only nuclear regulator that is asking for significant upgrades to the designs. The other regulators are simply essentially asking that the reactors meet the standards that existed when they were initially licensed. And the list of upgrades is very significant. And for example, the regulator is asking for core catchers to be retrofitted to all the plants, and that will be a huge and complex operation, not to mention expensive. The cost estimates are in the region of 2 to 3 billion euros per reactor. The French government required that 2 reactors be closed last year, and 12 more are expected to be closed by 2035, although by then they will be more than 50 years old. EDF wants to operate the remaining 44 reactors for up to 60 years, which would take us to beyond 2060. The UK is a very interesting case, but because the reactor technology is so different to what is used anywhere else, I won't say too much about it. We have 8 nuclear power stations, and 7 of these use the UK's own design, which is very different to the design used anywhere else in the world. It's the so-called advanced gas-cooled reactor, which is a graphite-moderated carbon dioxide cooled plant. And essentially the reactors operate as long as they are licensable, but the advanced gas-cooled reactors have significant life-limiting features, and those life-limiting factors are coming into play soon. A particular problem is the graphite moderator, which is not only a moderator but also has a structural function, and there are now doubts that it's capable of performing its structural function. So 1 station is likely to be closed this year, 2 more next year, and 2 more will be closed in 2024 after 35 years. So the average life is between 35 and 45 years. The 1 pressurized water reactor we have is expected to run for at least 50 years. There is no expectation of that being retired anytime soon. So apart from the United Kingdom, all countries are seeking at least 60 years of operation. If we move on to Eastern Europe, all the countries there, except Slovenia, have Soviet design reactors. Armenia built 2 reactors of the earliest Soviet PWR design, the VVER. 1 of these was closed in 1989 after an earthquake there, when it was found that the plant was not designed to stand up to the earthquakes it was likely to receive. So 1 was closed and 1 was upgraded after about 5 years of work by Rosatom. It's now licensed to operate till 2026, 6 years of operation, but it's now seeking 10 more years with the help of Rosatom. Bulgaria has 2 reactors of the 1,000 megawatt design, and those are now expected to operate for 60 years to about 2050. Czechia has 4 of the smaller reactors, the 440 megawatt reactors, and those are expected to run for 60 years till 2045. The 2 newer ones, the 1,000 megawatt design ones, will run till 2060, 60 years. Slovakia also expects to run its 440 megawatt reactors for 60 years till about 2045 to 2060.
There seems to be a problem with the connection.
We seem to have lost Steve.
Yes, it seems so.
Should we wait for him to re-enter, or?
Yeah, it is a question to the technical support. What are the chances that Stephen can rejoin? Right, I'm taking over for Wolfgang now. So, but the question is, what about Stephen? He is Okay, and should we wait for him to come back, or should we go on with the questions maybe? Okay. So thank you. So Stephen had some problems with his connection. There are some questions which were not to which were not on his talk. So I would like to take them over. Especially, there were two questions about the licensing situation in Switzerland, and the speakers the question pointed out that in Switzerland the operating license is unlimited, and that the plants can be operated as long as they are safe. So, which is true. So, to be more precise, you have an unlimited license with a periodic safety review, which has to be done every 10 years. And this is not just the situation in Switzerland. You have this situation also in other countries in Europe. And also many countries which have limited license, when they are doing a lifetime extension, then they are removing the limit and give the license unlimited, but connected to a periodic safety review every 10 years. The point is that, of course, when you design your nuclear power plant, then every component must have a lifetime, and you must have a time frame for your safety analysis that you are looking at. And this time frame that is hardwired, so to say, in the nuclear power plants when they were taken into operation is between 30 and 40 years. And so even if you are not, if the license is given unlimited and conditional on a periodic safety review, you are nevertheless you are in the situation that you are extending the life of the plants beyond what was originally planned, and that you are facing all the problems that you have with aging nuclear power plants, and especially that's the basis that you had at that time for the license changed a lot due to new information that was received in that was gathered in the last 30 to 40 years. Okay, and since Stephen is still not here, there is one question which is probably, I think, to Helga and maybe also to me. Wouldn't NPP be rather supportive in solving large-scale blackouts due to their capability of island operation and large blind power capability? So Helga, if you agree, I would also like to comment on this question. So first, not all nuclear power plants have the possibility of house load operation, which means that they can cut back on and can reduce the power and operate and just supply house loads. This is typical for European nuclear power plants, but a little bit less typical for US nuclear power plants. So this is not a common feature, first. Second is house load operation mode is an emergency operation mode, and it's used as one of the barrier against the station blackout at the nuclear power plant. So it's not something which is which you rely upon. And third, you need to if you really have a large scale blackout and you want to power up the grid, you need a power plant which has not only the capability of island operation mode, but which is black start capable, which is has the possibility to initiate the grid. And these are typically not nuclear power plants. These are hydro power plants or gas power plants, which have this possibility of to be black start capable. And station blackouts are especially dangerous for nuclear power plants. This is the problem. So this means cannot, so the house load operation mode is prone to errors and prone to fail. Is now Steve coming back? No. So prone to errors, prone to failure. And if you lose your house load operation mode, and if you lose your emergency diesel generators, then this is a situation which is dangerous for a nuclear power plant. However, such a scenario where you have a large-scale station blackout is, let's say, is not that likely, probably, to affect the nuclear power plant.
May I add, Nikki?
Yes, please.
That the problem is that the likelihood of the grid being affected on a large scale is increasing with climate change. If we have increasing storms crossing Europe, for instance, with higher intensity, stronger winds, more blizzards, whatever, the likelihood of grid failure, not only in one place but in several places, increases, and that makes the danger of large-scale blackouts much larger. And due to the fact that regaining power is not simple in such a large connected net, this can mean that that large-scale blackout will be maintained for a longer period of time, possibly longer than the diesel generators or others are able to maintain the cooling flows in the nuclear power plants. So with increasing climate change, this scenario just becomes more likely. It's very difficult to put a number on that. And also, if you talk to the people responsible for the grids, they will tell you that the grid is already rather endangered, and that we've had quite a bit of luck that nothing like that has happened so far. But the combination of a grid getting more complicated, more complex with climate change makes the situation more likely than it was in the 1980s, for instance.
Okay. So there are two other questions, which are clearly for Stephen Thomas. So since he's not back yet, I would ask if there are any additional questions. Please type them in the chat.
Nikki, could you say something about the costs of refurbishing? Why refurbishing would be more expensive than building new plants? That was one of the questions, as I saw.
Okay, understand. Yeah, if you if you really would refurbish existing nuclear power plant to the current level of safety, then this is in many cases very difficult or even impossible. So I mean, if you look on the you would, for example, at the moment, state of the art is to have the spent fuel pool inside the containment, inside the containment where you also house your nuclear reactor. If you did not do this at the time of the construction, and if you did not plan for it at the time of the construction of the nuclear power plant, and now you would have to refit a spent fuel pool in the containment, this is something which probably would mean that you would have to build a bigger containment, and in a environment which is which is not accessible, where you have a high radiation which you cannot extend. So this is something which would not be possible. Or if the same goes if you want to let's say if you want to exchange the reactor pressure vessel, which is subject to high neutron fluxes, and which embrittles over the time. And if you now want to, let's say, have your exchange the reactor pressure vessel, it's something that you will not be cannot be do with within in an economic reasonably way. So the point is that so from an economic point of view, and this is probably why it's done. What is done is that you look on the viable safety improvements, and you make a cost and benefit calculation, and those which pass this cost benefit calculation are implemented. Yeah, so there is a lot of backfitting and refitting is done, but it's not. This is not the aim to have the same safety level that you would require from a new nuclear power plant. Okay, so there are two questions now to you, Helga, about the electrical grid. The first one, why is it on the edge, and does it have any link to the massive build of renewables?
Well, I think it's not so much the renewables directly. It's because the whole grid is changing from a unidirectional grid to a multidirectional grid, and of course there's also the increase in users. So the grid was really developed for a different setting and for different size, and you could say that is due to renewables. That is part of it, but it is not the only reason why the grid is problematic. Has become rather at risk. But yes, if there were no more, if power plants had not increased and so on, and renewables were not part of the system, then things might be better and easier. Which does not mean that these are not solvable, these issues. But at the moment we're in a transition phase, and in this phase where energy comes from regions that did not used to be an energy producing region, and is distributed in a completely new way. This, of course, requires logistics that also have not been fully, that are not fully compatible across Europe. We also have the opening of Europe to more countries. So I think there's a number of factors which go together to endanger the reliability of the grid.
Okay. And the next question is also to you. Which risks due to climate change are the most dangerous for nuclear power plants in Europe?
I'm not sure you can give one answer for all of the nuclear power plants. I think one of the issues which is quite an issue is the availability of water, especially in there was a nice collection of case studies as well as some overviews about what climate change means to nuclear power plants.
Okay, Helga, there is now a lot of things are ongoing in the chat. Obviously, this seems to be a problem for many. Okay, so sorry. Okay, so sound is now. Okay, so thanks. Sound is working again. Helga, could you shortly repeat what you said?
Which part?
Yeah. I mean, the question was
the question on what is most dangerous.
Yeah, maybe very short.
So I think for coastal areas, it's sea level rise. It's not an immediate danger, but it's coming. It's mounting. There's fluvial flooding, also due to smaller and larger dams upstream of the nuclear power plants, and there's storms which can affect the grid, and through the grid, the nuclear power plants, and there is a drought and the possibility of lack of cooling water, which is typically not that the amount is really too little, but that the level, the temperature is too high to stay within the limits given by the license. And you cannot easily adapt those because this also has consequences for biodiversity. And as we all know, biodiversity is another problem, another serious problem that we're facing, biodiversity loss. So adjusting limits will not solve our problems.
Okay, and there are also two questions I would like to take together. One is the question, which in your opinion are the most significant dangerous new risks affecting the safety of old MPPs? And I would like to take this together with the question, blackout seems easily manageable for an MPP, simply increase the long-term fuel storage capacity. So I think if you look on the biggest risk for the and I mean new risks is maybe not the a term, because they are risks which were already present, obviously in the 70s when the nuclear plants were built. They were just not recognized as risk at that time. Yeah, so these are not new risks, and I would say. So there are a couple of risks which are now recognized as risk, which were not recognized in the 70s. So one is, I think, and this is one which I think is very important, are these common cause failures and the events which events which just take out all your safety trains if they are not diverse enough. So the point that you should design your safety trains redundant. You should have at least an N+2 redundancy. So this means now, the state of the art, you should consider that one of your safety trains is in repair. One of the safety train will fail, will have an accidental failure. And so one safety train, you may just take credit of one safety train. This is state of the art if you do a safety analysis. Yeah? So if you have an N+2 concept and you have then 4 safety trains, and 2 safety trains of those are enough to fulfill the safety function. But this was not the safety philosophy in the 70s. Yeah, and in the old nuclear power plants, you have often you can find that your safety trains are either not separated, or you don't have the redundancy that you would have today. And this was also a problem of the Fukushima accident. You had all your diesel generators in one room. And when this room is flooded, one event which affects all, then okay, you have several trains, but you lose all of them at the same time. So these common cause failures, that the importance of those, I think this is something which is not recognized enough in the existing plans. the possibility that the core may melt is something which is not recognized enough, and also station blackout. Yeah, this is also something which was studied. Yeah, one event which affects all. Then okay, you have several trains, but yes, you lose all of them at the same time. So okay. So if you look on, if you think on station blackout, this is very dangerous for a nuclear power plant if it happens. And in a new power plant, you usually what you try to do is to have passive systems which guarantee the removal of the decay heat for several days. And this is not equivalent to just piling up fuel for your diesel generators. If you think what happened at Fukushima, then it was not just it's not just the issue of having enough fuel for your diesel generators present. So and also in the safety analysis, usually in the 70s, 80s, 90s also, you were just considering a station blackout for half an hour. Yeah, and more than half an hour station blackout was considered to be so unlikely that it's within the residual risk. This is different for the new plants. So this is from my point of view, are the so severe accidents, common cause failures, redundant and diverse safety systems, and also station blackout. I think these are couple of the risks that were underrated in the 70s and 80s.
I might add that diesel generators are not made for constant operation. They are emergency diesel generators. So even if you have enough fuel, it does not mean that the machines will not suffer from the operation.
Okay, so we are already a little bit over our time. It's a pity that Stephen could not reconnect, so we cannot ask the questions that were posed for Stephen Thomas. Nevertheless, I would suggest that we break for lunch, to have a late lunch, and that we reconvene at 3 o'clock, and we will have two separate sections of 3 o'clock.